Who are you referring to when you say people are being destroyed? Are you referring to people like yourself?
You know, if you look at, for example, Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein conducted a conference called Confronting Gravity. I don't know who Jeffrey Epstein was, but I would certainly bet money that he was a product of at least one or more elements of the intelligence community.
The CIA, the FBI?
Those are ours, right? Department of Homeland Security has some of this stuff. Geospatial intelligence has some of this. You know, it's a large network. I'm talking about people like David Grush. I'm talking about people potentially like David Fravor. I'm talking about people like Jake Barber. I'm talking about scientists like Leo Szilard. Imagine if Leo Szilard didn't know that the Manhattan Project was going on, or Jack Raper, a journalist who broke a story. These people all think that they're doing their jobs. I desperately want to know why Jeffrey Epstein knew so much about my work. And I want to know why he was connected to my graduate program. I was in the Harvard mathematics department. Jeffrey Epstein was absolutely connected to the Harvard math department. I want to know why.
How was he connected to the math department?
You're pushing me to say things I'm not going to say. But
Well,
I don't mind.
I'm curious. I'm not trying to push you.
I understand,
Yeah.
but I'm just not going to do it. I'm saying that anybody who wants to
You said he was connected to the math department.
the Harvard mathematics department.
How did you know he was connected?
You can Google it. You could Google it right now. This is not, I can point at all sorts of stuff that's hidden in plain sight.
So I'll take your word for it. And the assertion that I'm picking up on is that Jeffrey Epstein was planted in your world to keep...
I'm not saying he's planted. I don't know who he was. I don't know who ran him. He certainly was not a financier in any standard sense.
Really?
That was a cover story, yes.
The way that we know Jeffrey Epstein, in the UK especially, is just this guy who was this rich guy who had this island, who brought people there and then did these despicable things there.
Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, that's the story.
Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. It's called perseveration. He was a disgraced financier. What kind of a financier? A disgraced one. What was his name? Oh, he was disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. They perseverate that into your mind so that you auto-complete that in your LLM life. Do you believe that that's what Jeffrey Epstein was?
You met him.
Yeah. I
Was
can
he a
tell that
disgraced financier?
he wasn't a financier the day I met him.
What was he?
He was a weird guy who didn't seem to know a lot about currency trading. Claiming to run a multi-billion-dollar FX hedge fund.
When you say a weird guy, what made him weird?
Same stuff I've said on Chris Williams. I'm not going to go back through that. Just my point is you're getting a different interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to get at is Jeffrey Epstein knew a tremendous amount about my work when nobody knew anything about my work. And he had a pipeline into me that I didn't understand, which is that he was connected to my graduate program. And you can check out the conference called Exploring Gravity.
And hosted a physical workshop called Confronting Gravity.
Confronting Gravity, that's right.
In March 2006.
Yeah, what is Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein is very focused on gravity.
Was it a gravity conference?
Yeah.
It was about gravity.
Yeah.
What the fuck was he doing talking about bloody gravity if he's a financier?
It was very important to get Nobel laureates and some of the smartest people on Earth to come to the Virgin Islands and talk about gravity. Stephen Hawking was there, David Gross was there, Lawrence Krauss was there, Lisa Randall was there, right before his conviction. And I'm telling you, he was very focused on the Harvard math department, and he knew all about me in ways that he wasn't supposed to.
I have to be clear. I have to be clear on my understanding of what you're saying. From what I understood, and you can say, Steve, I'm not going to answer that, whatever, but I just have to, because you've opened up a curiosity hole in my mind,
Sure.
So let me try and fill it, even if it's the conversation I had with Chris.
I'll just evade you.
Fine.
Yeah, fine.
Like, fine, you're within the right
Wonderful.
to evade me, and I hold the right to ask, which is, what I'm hearing is you believe, and I'm just going to say it how I think it, is what I'm hearing is you believe that Jeffrey Epstein was not a financier. He was planted in some way to interfere.
He was a construct, is what I said.
He was a construct in some way to mess with the progression of physics?
Jeffrey Epstein, apparently, I think I'll tell you what I said. When I met him, when the meeting was over, I immediately called my wife and I said, I have just met a construct. She said, what do you mean? I said, this person is not who they claim to be. Somebody has constructed this human being to be something that they are not, which is a hedge fund genius. Somebody who could understand the euro and the yen like nobody else. Bullshit. Not true. I believe that whoever constructed Jeffrey Epstein was running multiple different programs through the same thing, having put in a large initial investment. It wasn't about one thing. If you build a mall, you don't just have clothing stores in the mall, you have a food court in the mall, right? You have jewelry in the mall. You have all sorts of different things in the mall. Jeffrey Epstein was a construct of something that was running multiple things. One of those things was science. And I don't think that the science and the pedophilia were necessarily in the same bucket. He was funding all sorts of people. I don't think everybody at that, part of the problem with calling his plane the Lolita Express and calling his island Pedophile Island is that you just can't see all the different things that were going through this guy. I don't think almost any of those scientists are exposed, maybe a few of them, but very few of them, to anything really horrible. I think he was trying to keep a periscope on everything that was interesting. And I think that his girlfriend's father, Robert Maxwell, was all through scientific publishing. And I think Pergamon Press was in part a control mechanism for making sure that revolutionary discoveries were taking place within a framework. Anybody can, look, you can write a Substack article and you can hit post and suddenly the world has access to your Substack article. That is a nightmare. What if somebody posts, weaponized anthrax? What if they do the equivalent of saying, what if there's a neutral proton?
So you think he was controlling science?
I think that Robert Maxwell was in part trying to control science. I think Jeffrey Epstein was in part trying to fund science, trying to control it. I don't really know. Again, part of the problem with why conspiracy theorists have a bad name is that they're not content to live in ignorance. And I am. I know something is really off with this story. If you look at me saying things like, you don't know whether Biden is going to make it to November. Ha, 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 Eric, what an idiot, blah, 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 okay? Then he has a debate. He doesn't make it to November. I'm not Nostradamus. I'm just dumb enough to say something in public that makes sense. Let me say something in public that makes sense. Our national security people suck at their jobs. The people who are in charge of the Department of Energy, which is masking the Department of Physics, which is masking the Department of Nuclear Weapons, right? The Atomic Energy Acts, which are really about atomic weaponry, recast as Atoms for Peace or who knows what. Jeffrey Epstein, who is not a disgraced financier. The newspapers that have always had a national interest component and have liaisons so that they can work with the CIA and the State Department and they do each other's bidding and scratch each other. This whole network is what I've called managed reality. We live in managed reality. We are all in some version of the Truman Show. And you can look at it, you can Google it. I can give you 1 million search terms, and every time I give 1 million search terms, you'll watch my reputation get torn apart. Are you going to blame me that you didn't know what the whole of society approach is because you didn't know the Daniel Inouye Center for Security in the Pacific came up with an idea for soft fascism to fight hybrid wars? You didn't know what hybrid warfare? Look at my talk at ARC, Jordan Peterson's group, the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. It's at almost 2 million views. And why is it? Because people are saying, I didn't know these terms. Did you know what the Human Terrain Project is? Do you know about human terrain? You're a mountain, I'm a valley, and instead of war planners figuring out how do we use that valley to capture that mountaintop because it gives us an eagle's nest, to snipe from or whatever, they say, okay, This is the second most powerful podcast in the world, second to Joe Rogan. How do we capture him?
Fuck. Leave me alone, please.
No, but that's what I'm trying to say. You're human terrain.
Yeah.
When the human terrain wakes up and says, wait a minute, I'm human terrain? Well, my feeling is, if you don't want me to talk about this on a podcast, then keep your terms separate. Nobody knew the term pre-bunked malinformation. Do you know what pre-bunked malinformation is? Malinformation is information we don't want to get out. Technically, people try to pretend that it's information that will be misinterpreted, but really it's real stuff that is deleterious to the narratives that we're trying to push forward and what we're trying to do. And pre-bunked means discredited. So we know what debunked, we have to debunk disinformation. We get that. But you didn't know that we had to pre-bunk malinformation, which is we have to destroy truth tellers.
What do you think that means for people like me as podcasters? You know, because we're doing these long form conversations.
You'll snap back. You'll say, that was a really interesting talk. And then you'll have somebody else on who'll be talking about the importance of melatonin and how we don't understand the role of sleep. And then you'll have somebody else, on who'll be talking about how do you do a clothing brand from scratch and turn it into $1 billion unicorn. You're not going to stay here on this topic. This is your time with me, and it'll have some effect, and it'll start to fade. And that's what this is. I'd love to be doing my podcast. I just don't know how to do it safely. I want to talk about taking our lives back from the intelligence community. I want to talk about taking our lives back from Silicon Valley, even though those people are my friends. I want to talk about taking my life back from the phone, from despair, from not having a future. I want to talk about having a glorious existence that is not mediated by morons who sit inside the Beltway and play with large budgets and hurt people, particularly really good people who are good at their job, who are trying to figure out how to advance humankind, their family, the national interest, and get fouled. I did not ask for Jeffrey Epstein to fall into my life. I met him once. But it was enough to know, holy cow, the Harvard math department can't be what I think it is. Why was he there? I never heard his name when I was there.
Is that where you met him, in
No.
Harvard?
No. I think very powerful people at JP Morgan told me I needed to meet him. He didn't want to talk about finance. He wanted to talk about science.
You can't do your podcast safely. Do you
My
think
employer was a special informant to the FBI. He's like one of my closest friends. I'm not going to say who it is.
your employer?
Yeah, and one of my closest friends. I live under a periscope. Proctoscope is really what I meant. But yeah, I want to do physics, man. I'm really, really good at it. And if we have an idea that we shouldn't do physics in public, I would like to have a call from somebody inside. Hey, Eric, we need you to come in. Okay, great. What's up? But I didn't use your resources. I didn't use your grants. Nobody ever informed me. My God, nobody ever informed me about restricted data. How many people on Earth know that there's a doctrine that says physicists don't have free speech? We can execute you for doing your job. It's never been tested in the courts, and I hope that the Supreme Court will not allow that. But if we have a problem that is so serious in theoretical physics that it needs the world's largest exemption from free speech, we need to amend the Constitution. You can't just do this as a sneak attack where you reserve the right casually to hook the 1917 Espionage Act up against the 1946 and 54 Atomic Energy Acts. I've canvassed my physics colleagues, You know, like one of the memes against me, which is very funny, is that no physicists take me seriously when I'm in their offices all the time. I just don't know what my life is. And with this latest advent of war in the Middle East, are you really going to pretend that if you can Google all of these things that I have no idea what I'm talking about? I'm looking to have a conversation with my own government. I'm looking to have a conversation about theoretical physics. And I can do it quietly, but I have rights, and I do not believe that the 1946 and 1954 Atomic Energy Acts are constitutional. Try me. There is no restricted data. You can't do that to an American. And you can't just keep mounting covert influence campaigns, you know? I just spent 5 days in the physics department. I'm not allowed to say that it was 5 days in the physics department as a visitor. I gave a talk. I'm not allowed to say that I gave a talk. I don't know what this is. And I'm tired of it, you know? It's just like, if you're managing the Middle East this badly, if you're managing physics this badly, if you're managing the national economy this badly, if you screwed up COVID this badly by getting inside of the Lancet and Nature, you know, peer review is this fake thing that supposedly stretches back to the founding of the Royal Society. And it's very clear from the scholarship around it that it comes out of a period between 1965 and 1975, initiated by the Medicare Act, predicated on the need for editors for the journal expansion founded by Pergamon Press and Robert Maxwell. By 1975, there's a giant battle between the NSF and both fiscal and cultural conservatives against something called Man, A Course of Study, or MACOS, where peer review was born in a Utah clinic, came out of the medical literature because the federal government in 1965 with the Medicare Act picked up the need to pay for so many medical procedures. They wanted to say, why are we assigning this many medical procedures? The doctors circled the wagons and said, we will peer review each other. Then by 1975, the NSF was under the microscope, and they used peer review as a self-defense of last resort to say, we will be reviewing each other, right? Peer review is a myth. The scholarship is clear as day. I can't keep going on the world's largest podcast saying everything that can be Googled and figured out and just constantly have as my reward that the government refuses to have a conversation with me and sends its gaggle of idiots to harass me.
You think it's doing that? It's sending a gaggle of...
Yes, I do. I do think that some of them are actual idiots who just enjoy causing problems. But I think more than anything, we have a real problem. Science is too powerful. If you wanted to just cut to the ultimate core of this, if 4 amino acids can shut down planet Earth, if a 9-page paper solving the double spend problem can create a new currency not backed by violence, but backed by mathematics. If the concept of an inner product in a large vector space generates something you can't tell isn't a human being in 2017, do you have any idea what the power of the human mind is at this point? Linear algebra can create something that you would fall in love with. It can create the most beautiful music you can imagine, or it can animate a photo of a dead relative so that you can actually have the experience of having some video of you with a great-grandparent you can't even remember. Science is the most amazing, powerful, crazy stuff possible. And we spend a fortune trying to convince people that scientists are worthless, that scientists are incapable. And in large measure, they've convinced the scientists themselves. My colleagues, the supposed physicists, will spend their entire lives pretending to do physics and retire without ever having actually done any. I was in this physics department I was just in. It's been a long time since I've spent that long as a visitor. The top people in this physics department professed that they had no interest in the physical world, that they only cared about the mathematics that they were doing. And I just thought, you're in a theoretical physics group, and you profess openly that you have no interest whatsoever in the physical world. Well done. I don't know who you were. I don't know how you did it, but it took you 4 decades to get the physicists to stop caring about the physical world. Somehow what we did is we stopped the world's most powerful and the world's most important group from making progress. And why Elon Musk is not out here saving this by just throwing a few billion at it. You know, Elon, if you're out there, it's Ad Astra, yes or no. Mars is a stopgap message. Do you want to go to the stars? Is there something we don't know? To the Department of Energy, do you want to have conversations? Is there anyone at all out here? That's my question. That's why I do the podcasts. And it's, by the way, I'm repeating myself. I've said this before. Send lawyers, guns, and money. There's no one out here. But I will say this. If we could get out of here, you know, in terms of transcendence, in terms of things that are really exciting, there's nothing that I had greater pleasure at as a father than taking my children for meteor showers. We take the dog, we go to a secret location outside of Los Angeles that's quite dark, and we just lie under the sky and watch for hours, you know, and look up at the heavens and think, my God, that's a destination. That's someplace I could go. I don't think that there's a more inspiring thing than to figure out the infinity of space, all of these galaxies and the deep field photographs of these space telescopes filled with worlds. And we're stuck here. It's like, it's enough already. Time to go. Let's have some fun. That's really what I'm excited about.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.